We're excited to have with us today Mark Meckler, one of the nation's most effective grassroots activists. I'll be very embarrassed if we don't have him with us today, but we're going to try. Mark co-founded the Tea Party Patriots and served for many years as its national coordinator. In 2012, after leaving the Tea Party Patriots, Mark founded Citizens for Self-Governance, an organization that focuses on growing the nation's bipartisan self-governance movement. And I take a second to tell you that this is a bipartisan movement. We don't espouse to any particular political party, even though today you have seen conservatives, but we in Maryland I am very actively, as the mom of the team, basically pushing people for a bipartisan message, because that is the only message that is going to gain any strength in Maryland. And we just need to remember that. So out of the Citizens for Self-Governance organization grew the Convention of States Project, which Mark will be discussing today. Ever since he began his work with the Tea Party Patriots, he's been a very highly sought after voice for the conservative movement. And his groundbreaking work as president of the Convention of States Project was made possible by his business and legal experience. But he would never have been successful without his passionate, straightforward, honest educating of Americans about the cause and effect of our broken government, and one effective remedy given to us by our country's founders. Mark has galvanized the grassroots movement in America to bring back citizen-controlled government as our founders intended. Just yesterday, Mark was appointed as the interim CEO of Parler. You might not know that, because he dedicates himself to free speech, privacy as a civil dialogue, and bravo to Mark for doing that. I hope that he'll be able to speak a little bit about that. It was such a surprise to us here in Maryland, and I just couldn't be prouder of him and Patty, his wife, for taking on this huge role. As well as leading Convention of States, which is really gaining steam. I don't know if anybody has pointed this out to you. We had this poster made last year in Maryland. We had 17,000 supporters at this time last year when we did our event live. And right now we are up to 22,356 in the state of Maryland. I think that's an astonishing amount of growth. And generally speaking, we add about 60 people every other day to Convention of States just through our volunteer work, onboarding people. And a few summers ago, Mark appeared with Senator Tom Coburn on Mark Levin's Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday show, where he laid out for millions of viewers across the country much of what he will discuss with you today. But you can see that interview in its entirety on the Convention of States website. I don't have a teleprompter, so sorry about this. Mark has a degree in English from San Diego State University and graduated with honors from the University of the Pacific, McGeorge School of Law. He began his legal practice with real estate and business law before specializing in internet advertising and privacy law. He writes regularly, and all of the leading national political news sites, both online and in print, cover his work. He also co-authored the book Tea Party Patriots, The Second American Revolution. Mark and his wife, Patty, moved a few years ago from California to Texas, where they share their love of the outdoors and horses. And I'm sure that ice wasn't in the cards for them, probably one of the reasons that they moved. So I believe that Mark is on here through dial-in, and please thank him for joining us today to speak to the advocacy of this critical resolution in Maryland.
So first of all, I just want to thank you guys for getting together, whether you're in the room or on Zoom. I just appreciate that you're in the game. You know, the country is at risk right now. I'm finding that Convention of States is an easier pitch than ever before, because if you're anything like us and you don't look at Washington, D.C. and think now is the time, I'm just not sure what would motivate you. You know, I do. We've got obviously out there occasionally get folks on the right that are opposed to us. And right now, I just feel like they're standing in league with the folks that are destroying our country, the folks in Washington, D.C., who don't care anything about the Constitution, the folks that believe they can do impeachment whenever they want to do impeachment, the folks that don't follow the rules as they exist, the folks that aren't interested in the Constitution, the folks that don't believe fundamentally in the United States of America. I mean, I think this is the core issue right now in our country. There are those of us like those on this call and those in the room that are what I call unionists. I mean, we're people who believe that the country is great as founded, that it has the best ideals of any country ever founded in human history, that those principles are eternal, and that they stand as long as we will fight for them. And there are a lot of us out there in this country. I think, in fact, in my opinion, it's the majority of us. But there are those now in this country, and they've become a stronger and stronger faction, that believe that America was somehow founded in 1619, that it's founded on evil principles, that it's fundamentally racist and irredeemable. And their intent, quite frankly, and openly, they're willing to say it now, is to tear the country down, is to destroy the very foundations upon which the country was built. And one of those foundations is the Constitution of the United States of America. And it has been under assault in America for a very long time. This is nothing new. This direct assault on the Constitution has been going on for about 115 years. It's primarily been conducted through the auspices of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has taken something that was a beautiful, elegant, well-balanced document, and they have largely undermined it. They've expanded the powers of the federal government from limited and enumerated to unlimited and unenumerated. They've gutted the state's power to act as they believe they should in the interest of their people. And they've done this mostly not under the watchful eyes of the American public. We had over the century grown what I would describe as just generally fat and happy. The economy generally, though there have been some bumps and bruises along the way, generally good. And we've been a thriving nation, generally secure in the world. Of course, we've had our bumps and bruises in that regard. But we come to today where the greatest enemy we face is from within, from people who would undermine the very fabric of our republic. And the founders get to the point where the federal government becomes tyranny. That government is not going to propose amendments to restrain its own tyranny. In fact, no tyranny in the history of humankind ever has. And so they gave us the power to do this. And the real question for us, for our generation, is do we have the fortitude to do what it takes? Will we stand when the light of liberty faces extinction, when the torch is flickering? Will we stand and defend that torch of liberty? You know, Reagan said that every generation has its own fight, has to defend that torch. He said that liberty is never more than one generation away from extinction. And to quote Reagan, I would say, are we going to stand and fight, or are we going to threaten? Are we going to push our children to the first step towards 1,000 years of darkness? That may sound really dramatic. It's not overly dramatic. I couldn't possibly overly dramatize this moment in history. You know, history's pendulum swings in an arc from tyranny to really bad tyranny. Most people think I'm going to say tyranny to liberty, but if you look at human history, there's not a lot of liberty. And so we're looking at the arc from tyranny to really bad tyranny, and you look at the United States, and we are an exception. We're an outlier in history. And the question is, will we do what it takes to preserve that outlier? Will we cheat history? Will we cheat the history that has befallen all other republics, or will we follow along the same path? Will we fall to the same fate? I can tell you, for me, I have no intention of falling. I'll do whatever it takes to fight for a convention of states, because I believe only the people can save the United States of America. And by the people, by the way, I mean the legislators as well, because the legislators are our last line of defense. They were given this power by the federal government, by those who wrote the Constitution. They made them the most powerful people in our federal government, the power to call a convention, to propose amendments, and to ultimately ratify those amendments and change the form of our government. Only state legislators have that power. And so I think that this is the most incredible power in our Constitution. I think that the legislators can operate and can use that power on the people's behalf, and I think that's what we're doing. And I think it's important, very important, in a state like Maryland, that lots of people will say it's a blue state, you got to write it off. I don't believe that for a second. The nation is in trouble. A lot of people in blue states and red understand that, and every state needs to be in play. And whether or not your state ultimately passes, I expect that every state can, but whether or not your state ultimately passes the resolution, they're going to be in play when we come to convention. And that means you need to be in the fight and you need to be organizing. You know, and I'm committed to this fight. This is my job. This is my life. I've done this for 7.5 years. Some of you might have heard that I was recently made the interim CEO of Parler. And I did that not because I'm leaving Convention of States, I want to be clear, but because I think free speech is so important. It's important for Convention of States, for all of you, and I'm going to help Parler get back on its feet. And then I'm going to just go back to my business of Convention of States. But I want you to know, I apologize for the difficulties getting on today. It was snowy here. The power's on and off. The Parler thing is going crazy. Nothing's more important to me than you guys right there in Maryland and what you're doing today. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for your time. God bless you guys for letting me come on today and for your tolerance around all the difficulties getting here.
Thank you very much, Mark. I really appreciate you joining the group. I hope you're surviving the ice.
We will survive for sure.
Thank you, Mark.